Welcome back, my legends, to the #1 podcast in the frontier. And also YouTube, because nobody else is making these podcasts except this same person. So, some backstory of this podcast. Well, ever since Miss Stone did the interview with Revenant, she's kind of had a panic attack and has to be on leeway. So, our ratings have gone down. So, they decided to give me this podcast thanks to the good people at Hammond Robotics. Although they did tell me if my numbers don't go up very soon, I might find myself without a job and 6 foot in the grave. That part I was not supposed to read out loud. But anyways, welcome back to, oh yeah, that's right, we don't have a name for this podcast yet, so that's gonna be up to you guys. I'm gonna make it a contest where the winner gets 1,000 Apex coins of their choosing. I'm gonna pick my favorites, and we're gonna have a voting system for next time I make a podcast. And yeah, that's gonna be our official name, I guess. So anyways, so just like every podcast, this is gonna be me more about talking and explaining and trying to tell you what I'm thinking, what's happening in the story of Apex Legends, and not a lot of editing. I mean, I will have some edits here and there. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to talk about certain topics, and I'm going to leave a comment. I'm going to pin it to describe what I talked about. Hopefully I stay on topic. I hope I stay on topic. No promises there. So if you're not interested in a certain topic, you can skip on ahead. So let's begin. So, my legends, I was able to get my own podcast just because the ratings have been down. And this is a good opportunity since back in the day, people were into podcasts for some reason. And hopefully in the future, I can sell my rights to Spotify for $100 million. But that's down the line. Let me do just a quick setup of my podcast. So, right here, you can see my Funko podcast figurines. Over here, you can see my mini fridge that I bought it on the cheap. I actually bought it with this Wi-Fi router I found. But ironically, the Wi-Fi router has been giving me trouble. So, I'll figure out eventually how to fix this. And most importantly, my Lova body pillow. What else could you need for a podcast, honestly? So let's begin with today's first topic. So first thing we're going to talk about is why I think Octane is a scumbag or a fake friend. Now, if you watch my latest video, and I hope you watch everything and not just comment, why are you so mean to Octane? He doesn't always listen. It's very clear, and Tom Casillo has said it, that Octane is not an idiot. He's kind of bright when it comes to things he needs. Now, the thing about this video is that I wasn't able to fit everything because it was already over 12 minutes, and that was already insane for me, especially when it comes to editing. So I decided to talk about it more in detail in this podcast. So that's what we're going to do. And I also asked some of you to explain to me why I could be wrong about Octane, how he's actually a good guy. I thought I gave him a fair defense where I could be, okay, Octane he didn't grow up being loved by his parents. That's 100% a fact. We know that by Tom Casillo. He was ignored. The only person he had in his life was probably Lifeline, as we know right now. So I thought I gave him a good defense of why he's misunderstood. So Octane is a spoiled brat for sure. We know that because he always got what he wanted. He never earned anything in his life. He just asked for something, he always got it. And his parents did that because they didn't want to deal with him. They just said, sure, I'll get you this, just don't bother me anymore. So it's kind of sad, but we know this for sure is that Lifeline was probably always there with Octane. And I'd like to think that Lifeline always took care of Octane because Octane was like a spoiled child, and she had to be some kind of like the grown-up where she made sure that if he got hurt, she would, heal him. And I think this is why she got into medicine, because of Octane, because Octane probably did get hurt. He probably did get some kind of scratches, scrapes, broken bones, and she was the one that, at least tried to heal him up. So I think the whole reason, I like to believe that Lifeline's whole thing with medicine is because of Octane, because he always got injured and she always was the one that healed him. At the same time, I like to believe that Octane really enjoyed having Lifeline around, not because she was the one that heals him, but because there was somebody that he can show off his crazy stunts to. Because I like to believe, like we now know, is that Octane cares about fans. In fact, when he always talks about his fans, like, oh, this is for my fans, a shout out to my fans. You want to know who his #1 fan was? It was definitely Lifeline. Lifeline was his #1 fan, and I like to believe that Lifeline enjoys seeing his crazy stunts, even though he did kind of sometimes get injured. Octane knew Lifeline was going to be there for Octane. Every time he gets hurt, he knew that he'll be okay because Lifeline's there. And in my video, I said that these two had nobody but each other, because we do notice that Octane's parents neglected him. And I also think that because of what Lifeline's parents did, where they were war profiteers, they kind of were too busy doing whatever they were doing when the Titanfall was still going on, because we do know that Lifeline's 23. So when she was a kid, the war was still going on. So I'm pretty sure they were busy that these two only had each other. So you can just tell they have a strong friendship. But here's the thing, my legends. I want you to think about this because I like to think big picture. How exactly did Lifeline's parents and Octane's parents knew each other? So how exactly was Lifeline's dad making money off the war? How was he a war profiteer? How exactly was he profiting off? Well, because we do have an example of this that happened in real world events. Now, some of you have said that, oh, you don't want to hear about the outside world, but it's important because it implies to Lifeline's dad and how he was probably profiting off the war. Now, for those of you that know about the Iraq war and how it went down, you have a feeling where I'm taking this, but for the people that don't and just want me to simplify it, and you guys can look up all these documents and researches, but we were told in America that they had weapons of mass destruction. As we now know, they didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. That was all a lie. But anyways, the important thing about this is that once we started war with Iraq, the people that profited off the Iraq war were defense contractors. So people that make planes, they make weapons, they make some kind of advanced radar, rockets, whatever you can think of you can use in war, they're the ones that profited off of this war. So to me, this tells me is that Lifeline's dad was some kind of, he was either a defense contractor where he hired people to make weapons, or he had some kind of supplier where they gave him weapons and he just sold it to the highest bidder, and it didn't matter who it was. So I think that's how Lifeline's dad is a war profiteer. He had something to do with weapons where he either made or got weapons and then sold it to the highest bidder. Now let's talk about Octane's dad, because his side is very interesting, because anybody that lives in America understands we have some kind of healthcare system that's very, very broken. Now I believe he represents big pharma, people who make money out of drugs. Now I'm not gonna get into it because again, nobody wants to really hear that, but I believe is that, so I think Octane's dad made his money selling drugs. Now we all saw what happened when there was an epidemic here. People couldn't get their Germ-X because some people were hogging it and selling it for like $7 to $20 instead of, $1 or $2 what it normally costs. So in a huge war, you can know that medicine is going to be very important. It's going to be in short supply and in high demand, so the price is going to go way higher. So knowing that Octane's dad owns a pharmaceutical company, he probably price gouged the price of medicine a lot. Not only that, but I have a feeling that his story is going to revolve around the stim, because for those of you who don't know about Octane stim, it was a thing that's used by, I think it was used by pilots, but after testing they realized that it wasn't good to use by pilots, so only simulacras used them. And what I think this is going to go into is something dark, which I'll talk about next, but I think is that Octane's dad and Aegis Shay's dad have some connections with the IMC or Hammond Robotics, where they were profiting off this war and they really wanted this to continue because profits have never been so higher. Of course, they weren't fully responsible, but they were part of this grand machine that really only benefited the very few and made everybody else suffer for it. So when Lifeline figured out what her parents really did, she disowned them because she understood very clearly that her privileged life, everything she's living, everything she's ever had, was an exchange of the pain and suffering of thousands and thousands of people. It brings mass migration, a lot of refugees, a lot of parentless kids that become orphans. And what makes things worse is because in a war, there's a lot of short supply. There's going to be less food, less medicine. So it is a dark thing to think about, but it's very important to understand because this kind of gives you an insight of what Lifeline is thinking. She's probably thinking the same thing, that she feels extremely guilty because every time she watches the news or hears about the war when she was a kid, and in her mind it didn't click right away, but all of a sudden when she became a teenager, she finally put all the pieces together and just had like this huge guilt in her where she realizes that, oh my god, this is my fault. I mean, technically it was her parents' fault, but she feels responsible and she feels also sick at the same time. I think this is why she joined the Frontier Corps, because she wants to amend for her parents' sins, even though sadly it will never be enough. So she's doing this because she cares about people. That's why she joined the games, in my opinion, to bring awareness so that way people can donate. Love or hate the Apex games, it is one of the most watched things in the Frontier Corps and Outlands. So it brings a lot of awareness, especially if you're like Lifeline, who is a legend. She has won games, and that means she is pretty popular. So her in being in the games brings a lot of awareness, which means that a lot of people are going to donate to the organization to help those who've been affected by the war, which is a good thing. So even though it is dangerous and she could die, she's doing it to repay for her parents' sins. So you can just tell that Lifeline really cares about people. But here's the thing about Octane that honestly pisses me off. Octane doesn't, I'll be honest, I'll be fair with Octane. Octane doesn't really care about anything outside of what he's doing. That is his character. He does enjoy having Lifeline around with him as a kid. But as Octane grew up, he and Lifeline separated because Lifeline went to go do her own thing, and he decided to, instead of doing stunts by himself when nobody notices him, he became popular because he probably started doing social media. He's kind of like a YouTuber where he did some crazy stunts and people started following him, where he got a large amount of followers. And if you have a large amount of following, it doesn't matter if you're even, good in the Apex games. If you have a huge amount of followers, you can just join the games. We saw that happen with Lova, where they just said, hey, you have a large following, you can join the games. Newcastle, step aside again. But why is this important? Well, as a kid, Octane never got any attention. The only attention she probably got was from Lifeline. But as soon as she figured out the truth about her parents and went to go on do her own things for charity and paying back for her sins, Octane kept on doing daredevil stunts. And what happened is, I think that he started posting his things on social media and he started getting a large following of influencers. So out of nowhere, a lot of people started caring about what Octane is doing. And unfortunately for Octane, he kind of got in this mindset that the more crazy the stunt, the more followers you will get. And he's putting his health and safety on the line just to please some people on the internet, which is crazy to me. But this is going to be important because unlike Lifeline, who cares about people, Octane cares really about himself, because now he's getting the attention that he's never got as a kid, which a lot of people in my comments have been saying of my last video that, oh, Octane just wants attention. This is his way of getting attention. Maybe he did all these stunts so that way his dad would notice him. Maybe because Octane wanted his dad to be proud of him because he's able to do all this stuff, but Octane's dad never really noticed or really cared about it. But here's the thing I want to talk about more. And this is going to be a very sensitive issue, so if you don't want to hear it, you can skip on it. But we're going to talk about drug addiction because I believe Octane has some kind of form of drug addiction. And here's the thing, that stim that he uses, if I remember right on the lore wise, it was supposed to be used for only simulacras because they tried using it on pilots and it had some really bad side effects, so it was only used for simulacras. So why is Octane using this stim? Why? Because it's supposed to have some really bad side effects if it was only meant to be used by simulacras. And I think is that Octane, somewhere around his teen years, it'll make sense if it was in his teen years, unfortunately got addictive to the stims. And I think this could explain why he's very ignorant when it comes to people's feelings, because I have said that Octane is a scumbag because clearly he can't see that Lifeline has done so much for him, even risked her own job and reputation just so he can get legs in front of 12 other people. Which, by the way, imagine this, a lot of people were saying, oh, Octane is not some kind of manipulated person. Yes, he is. Imagine this, imagine I had a friend that worked at a hospital and I needed a heart transplant, right? And let's just say that this friend has a high position where I go talk to her and convince her that, hey, I need some kind of heart transplant, but these other 12 families are ahead of me and they've been ahead of me for years. But since, we're friends and all that since childhood, can you please give me on top of the list? And let's say that it said in the lore that it says in the lore, if you look at the EA official lore thing, that he contacted Lifeline for an old friend for help and guilted into forging in order to replace his legs. So let's go back to my metaphor. Let's say this friend did the same thing for me, that she was able to get me on the top of the list and get me a heart transplant. And then let's say I do something stupid like, I don't know, started smoking, which was the cause of my heart disease. You see how extremely selfish that and reckless that seems, that she put me ahead of all this family and then I started doing something bad to my health for all her help. In this case, it would be like Octane going back to the Apex games with his new legs, where he didn't go to the games because he had some grand cause to do. He went there because he wanted to go there for fun, which makes me wonder if that was another reason why Lifeline joined the game, so that way she can keep Octane safe. So what does this have to do with Octane's drug problem? Well, here's the thing. When Octane uses his thing, we can clearly see it takes some of his health away, and he slowly regains it because of this device that he has that cleans up his blood. So what this tells me, if it wasn't for this device that was cleaning up his blood after he takes a stim, this drug hurts Octane. Now, if we want to put this in our perspective, this is like some kind of performance enhancing drug, but has the side effect of like cocaine. We don't know if it's addicting or not, but the fact that Octane uses it a lot, but he's able to come clean because of this device cleaning his blood out, it's something you do not want to mess with. There's a reason why nobody else uses it by him, and there's also a reason why it's only meant for simulacras. So this makes me wonder, and I think I saw this somewhere where one of my comments, somebody said that in my last video, that I hope I can find it, but they said that maybe the reason Octane is very selfish and insensitive to Lifeline is because he can't feel anything. And that's very sad, because if this is true, then that means Octane really is going through something hard, because anybody who has a family member that has gone through some kind of drug addiction, it's not easy to get off of once you're hooked to it. So it makes me wonder if when Octane was alone without Lifeline, if he took this because he wanted to feel something, he wanted to know why he's alone, why nobody notices him, and it wasn't when he took this drug that he finally felt something inside him, and he's kept it some kind of secret where nobody really knows that this is really hurting him. I mean, we know because we've seen his health go down, but it's really sad. And I hope this is the case, because this will give him a really good arc where he finally realizes that, hey, I have a problem, and the only person that can save me, that's always been there in my life, is Lifeline, and I have treated her really horribly, and I need to pay her back for everything she's ever done to me. She's always been by my side, and I hope that one day I can tell her I'm sorry. I hope he does something like that, because that would be a really good story about a person who we all see as this crazy guy that does crazy stunts, but inside he's hurting because all his kid life he never was wanted by anybody, and the only person that ever did talk to him was Lifeline, but when she went away, he was all alone. And maybe this explains why Octane went to the Shadowfall world, because a lot of people were saying that, hey, he wanted to prove that he wasn't just this idiot that couldn't do anything, that he can also help get this artifact. And I understand where Octane's coming from, but the problem is that he puts everybody in danger because he did something so selfish where he went by his own. Now Lifeline again has to go out of her way to do something crazy to go help Octane, and I'm hoping that Octane finally sees the light and sees that, hey, sometimes I just have to slow down, because he's going way too fast, in my opinion, to understand the real important things in life to him. And I hope at the end of the story he does some kind of crazy stunt still, but at least he takes some safety precautions, because he's able to do, math in his head, like, oh, if I had to make it from here to there, I had to jump this distance at this angle, at this altitude, at this speed. So he's able to do that. So I'm pretty sure he's able to come up with some safety precautions where he's like, okay, in case this happens, I have this for emergency. If this happens, I have this for emergency. All right, time to drop off my 10-mile canyon. Something crazy like that. But at least he's safe about it. So I want him to learn that sometimes it's okay to slow down. And that's all I'll say about Octane, because I think Octane is going to have one of those really memorable arcs, hopefully, where he learns from his mistakes that, hey, it's dangerous to be fast and reckless. So I hope that's what Octane's story is going to be about. So, oh, whoa, time went up fast. This is what happens when you're thinking about theories. I wanted to make the first video about 20 minutes and then see how it does. And then, like, if it does good, I'll add more time to it, where I do it 30 to 40 to an hour if, you know, it's actually good. If not, I'll just keep it at 20 minutes. I think that's a good amount of time for a podcast. I wanted to talk about what you guys said about Octane, but I really don't have time. And so, well, I guess we'll do that next time. And plus, if you have any names for this podcast, let me know, because I want to talk about what you guys, your theories, what you think is happening, and we'll do that next time. This time was just about lore, I guess, what I think is going to happen with Octane and what I think Octane and Lifeline stories are going to be about. And thanks to you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
The days I could still have all passed away. The curse that's inside of me cannot be changed. I'm sorry I couldn't save you then, as through the air came the dancing flames. I'll keep screaming out with an unwavering tone. I'll keep on repenting for that night so long ago. That your hands disappear, I'll still find the place where you